I enlisted in the Navy in February of 1968. I served until February of 1972. I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. It was so cold up there. I wasn't up there the normal 12 weeks. I was there 14 weeks because of some kind of a delay. We spent, it was right at an extra 2 weeks. And when I graduated boot camp, I had orders to, my A school was Hospital Corps School there at Great Lakes. And that was 12 weeks long, so it was like through the summer. And most of what I learned had to do with hospital or clinic type stuff. They did train us somewhat in battlefield medicine, first aid. Showed us the films and everything, you know. But my first duty station after graduating Hospital Corps School was Camp LeJeune Naval Hospital. And I got there probably the end of August or first part of September 1968. And I was assigned to the surgical ward. Now, the surgical ward had 45 beds in it, and it had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 isolation rooms out in the hallway there. No, it had 3. And each room had 2 beds, so there was 45 plus 6, 51. There was room for 51 patients, maximum. Of those 45 beds on the main ward, 30 of them were always filled with wounded Marines from Vietnam, the Vietnam War. And the other 15, they did elective surgeries, emergency appendicitis, car wrecks, that sort of stuff. And sometimes when things got heated up in 1968, they took more of those beds for the wounded. But here's one thing I just want to share with you. Every bed that was taken while I was there was occupied by a United States Marine, either training over at Infantry Training Regiment or, like I said, wounded coming back from Vietnam. They had made their way through the hospital system like to Japan and then got them stabilized and got them halfway decent enough that they could survive the rest of the trip and come to the Naval Hospital, because that was the hospital that was probably closest to their home. That's the way they did it back then. So when I first got there, I had been trained to be a Navy corpsman. And all of my patients were Marines. It was like 2 different peoples, cultures talking to each other. And I didn't always understand what they meant, what they were talking about. And they didn't always appreciate the hands-on care that we had to give them, because these guys were 18, 19, 20 years old, most of them. And they had been trained to be tough, and they wanted to play tough. But some of them were pretty tore up, and they were with us for a very long time. I remember a couple of patients that were with us for I was there 13 months, and they were there all that time except for 2 months. So by the time I got orders to report to the Fleet Marine Force, Republic of Vietnam, well, it was a two-step thing. One, I got orders to go to the Fleet Marine Force and report to Camp Pendleton in California to attend my B school, which was, they called it Field Medical Service Training, where they would teach you battlefield medicine, and you would be trained to be a Marine. And they had 5 weeks to do that to you. It was intense. It was very intense. I had a lot of good experience medically and taking care of patients and open wounds and infections and things like that from my hospital experience. But I wasn't trained to fight on land in the rice paddies or jungles. So they trained us in combat techniques. They trained us the Marines' philosophy, this whole concept of semper fidelis, and that it was all about the team, the one on your right and the one on your left. And so about 2 weeks into that school, I started to realize that if I'm going to go to war, which I was, I want to be with these guys. And because I'd been trained as a sailor, I knew how that would not serve me well on the land. And so, but what I learned to do in the Marine Corps, these sergeants and staff sergeants trained us. They nearly exercised us to death. We had PT, and we woke up doing PT. We did PT before and after meals, and we did PT before we went to bed, and sometimes they got us up in the middle of the night and got us out there, and that's desert country, so it was just a little on the cool side at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd be out there in our green skivvies. They'd have us stand at attention until we were all shivering real good, and then they had us do PT. And it toughened us up. And then we went into the field to learn and practice warcraft. Camping and setting up your tent and the gear you need to carry, and just being able to take care of yourself and take care of your fellow Marines, and everybody just take care of each other. I learned to eat sea rats, and man, I loved them sea rats, especially turkey loaf. And but they made sure we were tired and dirty, but we had to stay shaved. So the cleanest part of my body was my face, and of course you have to clean your privates too. So those were the cleanest parts of my body. The rest of me, I was starting to turn green along with be the same color green. They say a Marine is green, and there I was being green from the dirt. So we learned to do ambushes. We learned what to do if we were ambushed. We learned how to set up ambushes. We learned Marine tactics, strategies, their doctrine. We learned how to follow orders, just like the Marines. For all practical purposes, when we finished that school, we were like fresh out of boot camp with medical skills. And we knew how to handle the weapon. Let's see, not boot camp, but ITR, Infantry Training Regiment. So we knew how to handle all the weapons. We could tear them down. We could put them back together. We could use them. We knew the application of them. We'd been through several live fires. We'd had to crawl in the mud with the barbed wire, the tanglefoot over our backs, and the machine guns firing across over us. And they had these little charges set in sandbag rings as we're crawling along, and they'd set that off. Everything to simulate as best they could your experience you'd be under if you were in combat. Well, after you go through it once, you're just not scared. You just dig in and keep going, you know. And they issued the uniforms, and so we integrated into the Marine Corps, though we were still Navy. And so when I went to, after I graduated that school, I felt like I could be useful in combat. I knew enough of the techniques. I was a quick study about things like that. And I knew what to do with myself. I had been familiar with guns and stuff like that, and sneaking up on things since I was a little boy, when we had to hunt for rabbits and squirrels to supplement our food, you know. So when I got to Vietnam, I was assigned in I Corps at Camp Books, a 3rd Marine Amphibious Force, Force Logistics Command. Well, I did convoys at first. I stood watch at the dispensary, and then if I had an overnight watch, it was basically port and starboard, the next morning a big truck would come by and pick me up, and we'd go out to the marshaling area, and then once all the trucks of the convoy were together and we got orders to take off, well, off we went. And we had to keep our heads on a swivel. We didn't get to travel fast because there was traffic. You didn't want to run over people. And I saw a lot of suffering out there. I saw a lot of civilians killed and wounded, and I was almost killed. Somebody tried to snipe me inside this little village we had to stop outside of. And it changed me. It really, really changed me. Until then, I was kind of always on edge and frightened, you know. But I realized that I could have just died instantly, but I didn't die. So I declared myself dead, and I forgot all about myself so I could take care of the Marines.